Let me take you back to the spring of 1997, Moscow, Russia. Picture a younger, handsome diplomat. I had just learned the Russian language for this operation, and I was anxious to practice it on the local scene. So one of my first adventures was to explore Moscow by concentrating on the art community, as I enjoy collecting art, but strictly by artists I know. Situated along the Moscow River across the boulevard from Gorky Park is a stretch about a half-mile long where artists display their work for sale. As I moved along from stall to stall, I noticed that their works were extremely similar. In fact, it would be what I would call boring, like snowy landscapes, onion-domed cathedrals, and such. Typical tourist fare. At the end of this long walk, I needed a break. I found a path leading up a hill to a copse of trees. Interestingly enough, I found that there were young bohemian artists there. One of the last I spied was a thin, dark-bearded, shaggy man. He resembled pictures I had seen of Rasputin, the strange character Tsar Alexander II employed to cure his hemophiliac son. His name was Gia Gogitadze. Naturally, my two initials, GG, made us kindred spirits in my mind. Looking at his work, I focused in on a man's portrait in pastels on a ripped piece of paper. As is the custom in most countries, we dickered on the price, finally ending up on the equivalent of $4 American. He originally wanted 7. This was accomplished rather lugubriously through my newly acquired basic Russian and his quite different Georgian dialect. Before I left, he introduced me to his wife, and I suggested that the three of us meet sometime in the future so that I could see more of his work. Weeks passed, and I was able to finally reach him at the phone number he gave me. Remember, this was 1997, and third world countries had not yet discovered cell phones. In fact, their regular service was often spotty. We arranged a time for them to come and visit me, as I needed time to get them cleared through the American Embassy security procedure. At the date and time appointed, they arrived with handcarts and loaded backpacks of paintings. I had planned this event along Russian custom. There were snacks set out and vodka galore. I prepared the table while they set about displaying almost 200 pieces of art. A few framed, but mostly unfurled pieces of work. So we toasted, and he showed me a huge library-type book. The Book of Perceptible Things and Pictures, End of the 20th Century. It was published by the State Pushkin Museum of Fine Arts. In it was an article about Gia Gogitadze and one of his paintings. Duly impressed, I started looking over this huge gallery they provided. We then proceeded to have our first course of soup, bread, and vodka. Following that, we returned to explore more art pieces. Next was the meat course, with vodka. Now, we walked along the art, and I decided that some of them were too similar, and I picked out only 10 different pieces that showed a diverse spectrum of his talent. I asked to keep those aside from the ones that I was not interested in. As we sat back down for dessert, I produced a list of these pieces by description. For instance, I titled one framed picture as Girl with Cigarette. In my broken Russian, I asked him to price each of these so that I could purchase more on a different date. This produced an unexpected retort. He jumped up and pounded his fists on the table, bellowing, "Druzhba" and "Lubov," which mean friendship, love. We seem to have had some sort of communication gap here. I didn't exactly understand what he meant, so we proceeded to dessert, and I felt we could haggle over the money details later. Dessert was non-Russian, major American, an aluminum pan with graham cracker crust and instant cheesecake covered with cherry pie filling and whipped cream. Oh, and brandy. This was so opposite of typical sawdust-tasting Russian desserts, I didn't know how they would react. Well, they scarfed it down and asked for seconds. At the sound of a local church bell tower bong, they realized that they had to get back home to their daughter quickly. They started putting their treasures away, and I retired to the kitchen to package up the leftover dessert for them to take to their daughter. Gia approached me in the kitchen and handed me a framed piece of his work, which was similar to the one that I had bought from him earlier. He told me that this was a gift for my dessert. As we walked to the door, I noticed that they had cleaned up all of those approximately 190 pieces of art and the 10 that I had put aside as liking were left behind. We all hugged goodbye. I was not able to get in touch with him after that, though I tried. About 3 months later, I got a call from him. Tearfully, he pleaded to borrow $200 American. His brother in Georgia had contacted him that their mother was close to death. If he took the bus that he could afford, it might be too late for him to say goodbye. I agreed to meet him the next day and gladly handed him $300 American plus a bag of groceries for his wife and daughter who stayed behind. I reminded him that this did not ever have to be repaid, as he had gallantly provided me with art, the work of his own 2 hands, with friendship and love. I learned in 2007 that one of his smaller pieces was for sale at a Moscow gallery for $2,000.